you were cheerleading people trying to assassinate President Trump prior. So we're not going to find common ground on that. That's okay.
I don't think anybody in the United States deserves to get shut out. I wish President Trump would say the same. But my question is
okay, I'm
how is it
that
okay that how, well, this is always clear. There's no question about this. If a future president, as a private citizen, 5 days before taking office, decides to sue the government, and then once he's in office, the DOJ decides, oh, wow, we're going to give you a settlement of $1 trillion. And the guy suing the government because he felt like before the government was just mean to him. Somebody in the IRS office is something mean. Would you support the president being able to do that?
No, I wouldn't, because it's not actual harm to say something mean. I don't support that whatsoever. Here, President Trump has a valid claim, but you would disagree with that because you were cheerleading people trying to assassinate President Trump prior. So we're not going to find common ground on that. That's okay.
Gotcha. What is Mike's legal background? Is it anything or?
It's tremendous. It's about 15 years of sustained oversight advocacy and anti-corruption work, intense litigation in the civil space, and it's advocating for this very concept for 5 years.
Okay, so you think that having the plaintiff in a case and the defense in a case being representing essentially the same party and creating settlements with itself, how is that a healthy adversarial process that's delivering us like good rulings, like good and just rulings?
You guys want me to answer this question a third way? I can try to, but I don't think you're understanding the way I've already answered it. It's that it was settled by the Department of Justice and Todd Blanche, the Department of Justice. It wasn't President Trump himself in that settlement.
But they work
agreement.
for him.
He was the plaintiff here. And yes, absolutely. I understand that. And now the left wants to use this argument of unitary executive control that exists only when it serves them to make that point. And I think that's bogus. I think, again, arguing over the form is ignoring the function here. And if we're going to ask questions, I want to know, Stephen, do you support or think that President Trump deserved to get shot at?
No, I don't think anybody in the United States deserves to get shot at. I wish President Trump would say the same. But my question is
okay,
how is it okay that this is always clear. There's no question about this. I go out and I do public events. I don't like it when people are out there trying to kill each other for political opinions. I just wish the president would have that opinion, and I wish people like you were brave enough to ask him to put that opinion out there.
Well, hang on, Mike.
When it comes to both sides being,
I'm gonna.
Oh no, wait, real quick. Just on the Todd Blanche thing. Okay, so it's not. This isn't even a confirmed attorney general. This is an acting AG.
He's auditioning
right? Not even with Senate confirmation. Yeah, you have Trump has given orders to the DOJ in a way that we have never seen, my understanding, at least in my lifetime, if not in all of U.S. history. Like, what is the equivalent action of any prior president, Republican or Democrat, putting on social media, I want you to choose this prosecutor, Lindsey Halligan. I want you to go after these 3 people. And then they start filing bogus indictments, stuff. Sometimes it doesn't come back from the grand jury, valid. Lindsey Halligan is still the appointed prosecutor, even though she's not supposed to be legally, and they keep trying to kick her off, and then the DOJ keeps putting her back on. Like, how are we going to say that Todd Blanche is not taking orders from Trump when he's ordering the IRS to give a ton of money, or the federal government to give a ton of money to Trump, essentially as a slush fund to settle his own lawsuit? Like, in any other world, you would be screaming about corruption here.
Okay. Couple things there. Todd Blanche works for President Trump. Everyone in the executive branch, at the end of the day, works for the president. In particular, this case, though, the record's out there that the Department of Justice settled it on their own. Okay. And so we're talking about, did President Trump walk in and go to the settlement table and say, exactly, you want to do this or you were fired? You're arguing things that aren't in evidence. And as it relates to who he gets to pick, that's a prosecutor, of course he does. And if you want a comparison, since these are really compound questions you're asking me, look at the President Biden's administration, how Lisa Monaco and Merrick Garland were coordinating with the White House and state prosecutors that went after Trump's allies and the whole web of weaponization, the very thing that right now we're trying to solve for the innocent people that were harmed by the whole of government weaponization under Joe Biden. Now we're talking about whether the right form of fixing it is appropriate, because nobody wants to deal with the fact that these people were harmed in a bad way.
Well, let's talk about that.
There's victims out there.
Mike, sorry, Stephen. We have a lot to get through. And so one final question on kind of the structure and form here, and then we will get into the specifics of the potential beneficiaries of this and some of who should this help and how it's set up. Is there, under this model, where you can sue as a private citizen and then your own Department of Justice that you're overseeing then negotiates a settlement that then creates a fund that then you are allowed to decide how it is dispersed. Mike, is there anything stopping, say, like, I know this is probably your worst nightmare, but a President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, if she were to run in 2028, if she were to sign on as part of an environmental lawsuit against the United States federal government for failing to act on climate change, right? Could she then, after taking office, negotiate a settlement, her own Department of Justice, to create a $100 billion Green New Deal fund that then she could appoint 5 people, just one with the consultation of Congress, but 5 political appointees to then dole it out? What would the issue be with that?
Yeah, like USAID or something to that effect of, taxpayer dollars going out the door through a run roughshod administrative state
Well,
to
that's
fund
congressionally
partisan
authorized,
activities
isn't it?
across the globe at
USAID?
scale. Yeah, sure it is. It's the same. So is the money here, by the way. Is it's like
Not
maybe
for
the
this
entire,
purpose.
basically the entirety of
No,
the
it's
federal government, which is basically a make work job for Democrats, 90% voting block. The examples are profound, but the problem for you guys is they're all on the side of the Democrats. That's how the federal government has operated in shipping money out over decades at this point. Americans are coming to realize it. And now that money can actually be spent to help people, the liberals who don't like it because they wanted to put these people in jail, they wanted them destroyed. And so, to your hypothetical, I'm sure the Democrats will try any which way to fund things that they want to do because they always do that. But now the different things is I'm going to rely on you guys to all oppose it as vociferously as you oppose this.
Well, I will gladly. But let's talk about then the victims, and let's move along here. So already we have
Just for the record, these are not real legal. This is like the craziest take on anything related to
Well, we don't
how
need to
our
get
legal system
into
works
the
at all, but
the
just-
legality of it all. I think we should focus on the merits
Sure,
and
we don't have a
morality
legal
of it.
argument.
No, I actually don't want to do that.
I would love to have a 1-hour
what were
legal
the
argument
legal
on this.
arguments
You guys
that-
can,
that you
guys,
raised?
nope. I'm going to keep the floor here, and you guys can set up law debate time later if you want. But I want to talk about the people. So
Would love to.
we've already got hundreds of January 6th defendants lining up to apply for this weaponization fund, which again, the payments are not going to be overseen by a judge. They don't even necessarily have to have a legitimate legal case. There will be some where they'll be past the statute of limitations for the actual alleged rights violation, but this again is not going to be a court process. It's going to be an extrajudicial process. So I'm wondering, Mike, if you were appointed, because it does say in the DOJ document announcing this that they will consider the morality of individuals who apply. Will you promise that no settlement money will be given to any J6er who assaulted a police officer?
No, I won't promise that because right now those terms are being decided by the Attorney General. I mean, that is subject to national debate. It's not up to me to determine the outward bounds of those things. It is to work
But if you
within
were put on the
framework that is
board,
established
would
by.
you support money going
then I'll tell
to
you.
somebody who assaulted a police officer, or no?
Well, I would, what the Attorney General said is we would review the totality of the circumstances, which I would do. And I'll tell you what I'm doing so I can be prepared to do that. I'm reviewing the settlement agreement for George Floyd, who, obviously resisted arrest and got 27
Hello?
million. The settlement agreements for Black Lives Matter rioters that settled with police and obviously resisted arrest. And so I want to see in the historical records of similar settlement agreements, how resisting arrest or other kind of activity, which is a matter of degrees, played out on that scale. And so those are all things I'll study.
Wait, just to be clear, the resulting settlements that result from the adversarial process of two different parties fighting on both sides with an impartial and a mutually adversarial judge in the middle, whatever results from those processes, you can't simply look at dollar amounts and compare them to this, which is like a mediation/arbitration fund with absolutely zero legal oversight, with absolutely zero engagement from our judiciary, with little to no oversight even from Congress. These are not even remotely the same thing.
So, Mike, I just want to get clarity. Get clarity. So, you would potentially be okay with money from the weaponization fund going to even violent January 6 offenders who may have assaulted police or were convicted or pled guilty to assaulting police officers. You won't rule that out.
Yeah, I'll answer the question again. That is the subject to the debate right now. The Attorney General went before Congress and they're arguing about that very point. And so I will work within the bounds that are set up for the commission. And then in doing so, in part, the standard of reviewing the totality of the circumstances in line with what the Attorney General said. You would look at the whole context surrounding any individual instance and what those bright line delineations are. Like we will study to see how previous similar settlement agreements had worked and taken those things into account and make the best judgment of using the best, use of funds to go to victims who most deserve it. And so you can take from that what you would like. But all this to say is when I am on the commission, if I'm lucky enough to be selected, I do not want to prejudge all these specific cases and draw the lines here with you
But
gentlemen.
it's just the reason I ask is because the
Mhm.
Department of Justice documents announcing this say very clearly the morality and character of these people will be considered. And
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I'm just kind of astonished to hear you say this, because my whole life I've heard conservatives as the party of back the blue, and now I'm hearing you would potentially be open to giving anti-weaponization payouts to January 6ers who assaulted police officers, who dozens of whom were viciously attacked and assaulted on January 6th.
Well, you can hear what you would like, but I would prefer you to listen to what I say. And I did not say what you just said. I said the decision for the line drawing is being made right now, and I will work within those frameworks that are established. And I told you I am in the process of studying the George Floyd settlements and other settlements with people who got into it with cops, and there are degrees of that, right? There's a difference between being on a barricade or something and not obeying an order and beating the crap out of a cop. Obviously, those things, with my background, you can expect what kind of judgments I will make, but I'm not going to prejudge specific context based off, the phraseology that you wish to use here.
It's not phraseology. I mean, dozens of people pled guilty to and were convicted of violent offenses, but that's fine. You answer the question.
Sure. No,
You can answer it however.
Sure, we'll take another run at it. Do you think there's a difference between
Go for
punching
it.
a cop in the nose or disobeying an order?
Of
Both could
course,
be
yeah. I'm talking about the
assault.
violence. I'm
Okay.
talking about
Then how
violent
do you draw the
assault.
line?
Yeah,
Right. You're asking me to draw a
charges
very
that are
particular
violent
legal
that they
line.
were found guilty of.
Okay, well then you're drawing another line, and then you're taking into account to use Stephen's previous argument, an adversarial process with an adversarial judge, because they did not have that in Washington D.C. in these kangaroo courts, and so there's going to be independent fact
Sorry, what do you
finding
mean?
that occurs.
Weren't
They
they?
don't
They
believe
were
in.
found.
They don't believe in courts. So what do you mean? What does he mean? They don't believe in
January
the judicial system.
6ers were
It doesn't-
they
that's-
were
Their,
processed.
their rights
I'm-
were run roughshod in the D.C. courts. I think that is
Yeah.
something that I've
How
been saying
so?
for a very long time.
Because it's
How
DC,
so?
because all the jurors are gay, all the judges are Democrats, and all their daughters are progressive
I
donors.
don't think
who
that-
are-
no,
Stephen,
I
do
don't
you
think
think
that's
the
what Mike
Supreme
is
Court's
saying.
That's
legitimate?
exactly what he's
Hold on,
saying.
no, trying to put words. Let me ask you a question, Stephen. You've asked me a time. Is the Supreme Court legitimate, and do you respect their decision in the Voting Rights Act case?
When you say respect, do you mean do I acknowledge them as law? Yes, of course.
Do you think they're corrupt? Okay. You don't think it was corruptly illegitimate or anything like that?
I think there are huge questions around Alito and Thomas and the perceptions of corruption based on the massive amounts of money that they are taking in.
What's
and
the connection to the January 6th? Because I don't want to derail into Supreme Court ethics
Because
debate.
Stephen said did something about the courts. I won't put words in his mouth. He just
Do you
said
think
them.
the verdicts
forget.
that were issued in the DC courts were correct for the Jan 6 people?
No, absolutely not.
You don't think they were legitimate?
I think the Supreme Court agreed with me. The 1512 charges were thrown out, guys. Are you missing that whole point? It was a bogus charge hanged over these guys' head, and they were run roughshod through a very intense process, which was out of proportion with anything afforded to anyone in any similar situation, to include the Black Lives Matter rioters, which actually weren't similar because they were way worse. They burned down a lot of this country and actually engaged in
Well, they were quite
serious
different.
sustained behavior. Yeah, the BLM were worse, and they didn't get charged.
It depends what metric you're looking at, obviously. It's worse in the sense that
burning
more
down the
people
country?
died, absolutely. Yeah, but it wasn't, a targeted attempt to overthrow an election result and an attack on democracy. It was hooligans
okay.
and protesters. And I think they were despicable, to be clear, and I wanted
Of which
them
there were
prosecuted harshly.
15,000 arrests also, by the way. This idea that we didn't
But
prosecute
a lot of
any
those
Black Lives
charges
Matter
were
guess who
dropped,
settled with them?
unfortunately, Stephen.
The city settled with them, and I'm studying those settlement agreements to apply for the commission.
But luckily, the thing is, Mike, though, in that case, the settlement was reached by adversarial parties, not by political appointees.
Was it? Because I saw
who
Jacob.
are
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I'm getting.
Oh, no,
getting
go ahead.
hot here. I was going to say, was it adversarial in Minneapolis or Minnesota? You had Jacob Frey supplicating himself on the grave of George Floyd, and then giving out $27 million to the family. That
They might be sympathetic
adversarial to
parties,
me.
but they're not literally the same thing, right? As opposed to Trump versus Trump. But we discussed that